Thank you, Peter. That was very nice. And I think I'm going to give myself the first question. Could you go back 2 slides, please? I just want a very brief point. Yeah. See, typically we can destroy any correlation by freely choosing one of the variables. Well, there's an important class of exceptions to that, namely causal correlations. That's what causal correlations are. They're the ones that stand up when we manipulate one of the variables. So, of course, if you have a model, you're treating some new class of correlations as causal. Of course, that's not going to apply to them. But there's no more reason for thinking of that as a sort of a restriction on us than there is in the normal causal cases of thinking that it's a restriction on us that we can't do something without the effect happening.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what do you count as a restriction on free will? I mean, you know, I said it's a restriction on free will that you can't telekinetically move your phone. Some people might say that's not a restriction on free will. That's just physical law. Physical laws can't be a restriction on free will.
Yeah, but no, I think my point is different. And it's not a restriction on free will to say that I can't let go of my pen without it hitting the floor.
I don't know. Why is that of a different kind?
I mean, no, I think my point is it's not of a different kind because, no, according to the retrocausal view, where you do have causation here, the restrictions on your free will are just of the same kind as the fact that I don't have the freedom to make this a world where I let go of the pen but it doesn't hit the floor.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think they are of the same kind, but I think I'd still want to say that they're still restrictions on free will. It's just that some restrictions are so obvious, you're so used to them. Yeah. I mean, you know, I have small children, they want to violate
well, yeah, but it's not just
all
that.
The time.
It's not just that, it's the fact that the very notion of causation brings with it the notion of this sort of restriction. Namely that those correlations we call causal are the ones where that sort of restriction is involved, such that performing an action necessarily or probabilistically comes with the
or at least that, you know, maybe the most important class of restrictions. Yeah, that's right.
Can I give a finger on that?
Yeah.
I wanted to comment on the same sentence actually. Thank you for the talk, Peter, which very much enjoyed and endorsed overall. But this particular sentence, I felt it was a little miswritten because.
Which one are you pointing at?
The same one as Hugh, the first one.
The top one. Yeah.
I think you were saying something like typically we don't have the what you later call observer effect, where the looking distorts the reality. We think we're sampling from the same distribution of lambdas or particles, whether we choose A, B, or C. So I wouldn't have expressed that thought with that sentence. I would have said typically we think there is no correlation between the objective state of affairs in the system and our choice of variable, which is different from destroying a correlation by some judicious choice of one variable setting rather than another.
Okay.
But that idea is a much closer to Hugh's gloss on, which sounded dead right concerning that.
Yeah. Destroy is clearly an overstatement.
So
as if there's some pre-existing thing
between you is that you meant slightly different from that sentence. What Hugh interpreted. I mean, Hugh read it understandably as conveying the idea. Typically, we can overcome causal correlations, which typically we can't. There are some, and there are other correlations are not.
But typically, our choices are independent of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so on my list of hands now, I have Howard and Harvey and Brian. They're the hands that are next. Howard, you go.
So, yeah, I guess you covered most of what I wanted to say, both of you, but there might be one additional point, which is, it just sounds like, so you might ask, why do we typically, think that these things are independent? And I think the worry might be the worry about signaling to the past. And that might be one of your reasons for thinking this is involved. So
I think it's much more, you know, people who don't think about signaling in the past think that your choices are independent of most stuff that goes on in the world. I mean, it's a special kind of
Yeah, so
physicists,
you worry
physicists
that
philosophers
it's
worry
possible
about.
maybe there'd be signaling, and that is not the case in quantum theory.
Yeah, yeah. So once you start entertaining these kind of retrocausal theories, you can start worrying about signaling.
And then you might want a deeper reason why that is not the case in quantum theory.
Yeah, right. That's right. You certainly want that, as other talks have made clear. You know, if you're going to have a retrocausal theory, you're going to want a story about why there's no signal.
Ravi.
Thank you for the very illuminating talk. My question in general, I wonder how independently can discussions of free will be, how independently it can be from the more general question of the psychophysical problem, mind-body problems, dualism, materialism, and so on and so on. Because the question of free will seems to take us to the question whether, you know, our consciousness is something which is part of the brain mechanism or something different. And at least in two cases I was reminded of Leibniz. That is one, the common cause. So Leibniz suggested that consciousness and the brain have a common cause, that is that watchmaker that plays two watches. And I wonder whether this is similar to what they say. And the other thing is that the worry about conservation laws. In both cases, if you're a dualist or interactionist dualist, then you seem to clash with conservation of momentum or conservation of kinetic energy. And doesn't the same go for free will?
So I guess the whole strength of the compatibilist strategy is supposed to be to sidestep all that. Right?
Kind of what? Epiphenomenalism?
Sidestep all the worries about dualism and interactionism. You know, you can have the human being, the mind can be a machine, and yet you can still be free on the compatibilist story, right? Because as long as the machine has the right kind of self-regulation and control, right, then it has free will. You have free will, even if you're
Genuine free will.
genuine free will.
Not an illusion of free will.
No, that's supposed to be the strength of the compatibilist story. That's of course why some people don't like compatibilism. But the compatibilist story is supposed to entail that you can be just a biological machine, and yet provided that machine has the right kind of self-regulation and control, and it has to be of a sufficiently complex, maybe even self-conscious kind. I don't know all the details. Then that biological machine can be free.
So what's the best reference to compatibilism that you can suggest?
I'm not an expert on free will. Anyway, Frankfurt's good. Dennett, Elbarum is good. If you want, stories about compatibility.
Freedom Evolves is a book by them.
Which
Freedom Evolves.
Freedom Evolves.
Brian.
I enjoyed that. I was wondering if you could help me think a little bit more about the skeptical worry.
Mm-hmm.
So suppose I'm willing to give weird causal explanations and all the nice ones are used up. Does it follow that I'm thereby likely to give weird causal explanations on just any occasion? Is that why Shimoni and so on seem to think this is some sort of global skepticism? And it seems like it could contain it relatively easily.
Yeah, I don't know why they thought it would undermine all of science, rather than, I don't know. I don't know why they thought it would undermine all of science. I guess as a rhetorical strategy, I acted for a couple of minutes as if I thought it did. But it seems like we're only entertaining this hypothesis in a limited realm. We're not saying that always, whenever you look at stuff, you affect it in a massive way. Of course, collapse on measurement quantum mechanics is a clearer example of something that might lead you to some kind of global skepticism, but not this kind, right? Has a little effect in some arcane circumstances, but generally not. So I don't know why they thought it would undermine the whole of science. I don't know why they said.
Matt.
Maybe you almost covered this. I was just thinking there's like various fishy things about measurement in quantum mechanics
Even before.
even before retrocausality, like not being able to do a measurement without disturbance, or the answer to a measurement depending on how you implement the measurement.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of other worries along those lines in quantum mechanics. Contextuality, right?
Is there any way in which this is like a different threat to science?
Yeah. So there's another mystery about the whole slew of mysteries about this Shimoni paper. There's another mystery about it. Not only does the kind of skepticism they point out not seem very wide-ranging, but there's all kinds of worries in the vicinity for quantum mechanics already, right? To do with contextuality of measurements. If you believe in collapse on measurement, then or the Mermin stuff about whether the moon's there when nobody looks, then you've got these massive observer effects going on all the time, right? So there's the skepticism that's there anyway, and then they identify this little extra element. Why are we worried? So you're right. It makes it doubly mysterious whether it's so worried. Yeah, you have a hypothesis.
If I understand what you think is not very kind of reliable, the quotation that every time we make an experiment, we think it's genuine and every other should behave the same way. If it means that the charge of electron which we measured many times, maybe it's wrong. I think it really takes out all the science. Every time we take freely electron and measure its charge, we get the number. We believe that every other electron that we measured has the same charge. And if this is not, if you take out this assumption, then we shouldn't believe in anything. We don't know now. We don't know anything. I think this is really a crucial assumption.
Okay, so you're with them that's
Yes,
a crucial assumption.
Contextuality, it's nonsense. The other things, nonsense. But this is the basic assumption.
So contextuality is nonsense
I don't have any reason to believe it.
because it doesn't occur in many worlds.
What?
Because it doesn't occur in many worlds.
Maybe subconsciously, but I don't know. This is why it's kind of very specific something that why would you like it? I don't see any reason to like it. And they're commuting, not commuting. Who cares?
Okay, so you think that this is a genuine new kind of skeptical worry?
I think this is a basic thing. You cannot not believe in it. No science. I think they're absolutely correct. If you make an experiment that every time you think you cannot believe that it's applicable to any other case, then all experiments have no meaning.
Yeah. If you have no reason to think that your measurement in one case is applicable to another case, that would lead to skepticism.
Yeah.
But that doesn't seem to be the right characterization of the situation, right? It's not that. It's rather that. You have reason to believe that every time you perform a Bell experiment, you're going to get statistics like this, right? But if nobody was measuring, then the statistics of the hidden variables might be different, and that's not the same kind of skeptical worry. It's like
It's the same story. It's like when I measure it, the charge of electron is this one. If I don't, it's different. No, I'm not ready to accept it.
We have a number of fingers on this point. Phil, yours was first.
I was going to add to that the retrocausal model should be thinking about the measurement choice as part of the preparation. And nobody's worried about preparations having observer effects.
right.
Or it does bring about the state.
Yeah, right. But I mean, I guess that's right. So it's just that the preparation has an effect. Yeah, it's just the part. It's just So right. So yeah. So it's just like a post-selection, and no one's worried about post-selection, least of all that. Right.
Well, it's like post-selection. It's cause. What's weird about it is it's backwards cause.
Yeah.
That's all.
That's all that's weird.
Otherwise, it's like a preparation. In this respect, the so-called observer effect.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Jeremy.
Well, I wanted to, on the contrary, support Levitis. In the sense that, I mean, my memory is that this 76 paper exchange is in something called, isn't it, a Swiss thing called the
Epistemological letters. Yeah.
So there was a certain, perhaps, vividness of the debate at the time that you would put the vigour, explain the vigour of their concerns, but I think that's onto something in the sense that it's your sanguine attitude is an artefact of the hope that there'll be a retrocausal theory that confines the retro to, experiments that are rarely done to test element quantities, leaving a largely forward drift, indeed overwhelmingly forward drift of all causation in this decoherent quasi-classical domain that we enjoy for most of our life. But, you have to take this retrocausal stuff seriously. I mean, if it's really the way the world is, why should the retro be tidally confined to the places where it underpins happy explanations of Bell phenomena? It could be all over the place and undermine our belief that when we measure the charge of an electron, it's a very close example, it's the same as when we don't. I mean, that overall, the distribution we sample is very sensitive to what quantity we choose to measure on that sample.
Yeah, in the absence of a theory, it's hard to say, right?
Yeah. It's very hard to say in the absence of a theory.
Yeah. So the mere fact of causation doesn't mean all is lost, but it doesn't mean you can't worry either.
Yeah,
I think that's right.
You might put it by saying there's now an interesting question why all is not lost, why most is saved, and that's a genuine explanatory burden
on the retro.
Yeah. Good. Brian.
I can see how that interesting question arises, but I wonder if there's an interesting contrast here between, say, more or less Reichenbach, Short's Salem-style meta-inductive attempt to answer induction, where you say, yeah, maybe the world is a weird place, let's be open-minded and do the best we can. On the one hand, or something in some sort of vaguely Kantian story that science goes away, which always reminds me of preparing for a bar fight by putting on eyeglasses. Assuming that everyone's going to observe the rule of not hitting a guy with glasses. I mean, it's actually a bad idea to prepare for a bar fight by putting with glasses, and only if you assume, only if everybody in the bar is really well behaved will that be a resource. So I think that that's something, open-mindedness to maybe the world being a weird place, and then trying to argue rather than just hoping and postulating. Seems like the intellectual high ground.
Yeah. That's right. But I guess if just to side with Lev briefly, if an assumption you're making really does lead to skepticism about everything, then you shouldn't be making that assumption. So you do have to argue that the assumptions you're making aren't going to land you in a skeptical morass.
Well, there are other cases around in contemporary physics, like the problem of Boltzmann brains, where not just in Boltzmann's original context, but in modern cosmology,
that's true. Yeah.
There is a genuine skeptical problem. Yeah. And I think the move from thinking there's a skeptical problem to thinking that the cosmological models in which there is such a skeptical problem are simply off the table seems to me a bit quick. So I think that even if these guys were right, and there was a serious skeptical problem, there wouldn't be grounds for immediate dismissal. We want to think our way around the problem a bit more.
Right.
Although I don't think they're right for the sorts of reasons that come up, or at least it's not obvious that they are. Good. Now, does anyone else have a question? Or shall we? In that case, please join me in thanking Peter for a fascinating